They mocked the Gravenmoor. Until 11,000 warships disappeared, I have lived for 600 years. I have brokered treaties between species that breathe fire and species that breathe light. I have watched empires rise on Monday and crumble by Friday. I thought I understood power. I thought I understood silence. I was wrong about both, and a woman in a black coat taught me the difference. My name is Tyvelis Shan. I am Cathari. Tall, silver-skinned, six-eyed, and trained from birth in the art of saying nothing while meaning everything. For 3 centuries, I served as senior ambassador to the Galactic Concord, the governing body of 42 spacefaring civilizations. We managed the known galaxy. We maintained order. We believed, with the absolute confidence of those who have never been proven wrong, that we understood every corner of the universe that mattered. Then the Gravenmoor came to our door, and we laughed at them. I remember the day with perfect clarity. The grand deliberation hall aboard Ishan Station was full. Delegates from a dozen species filled the tiered seating, their translators humming softly, their aides whispering behind cupped hands. At the center of the hall stood the petitioner's platform, a simple circle of white stone where anyone could stand and address the Concord. 3 humans walked to that circle. They wore plain black coats with no medals, no emblems, no ornamentation of any kind. They carried no weapons. They brought no entourage. The woman at the front was lean and pale, with dark hair pulled back from a face that could have been carved from quiet stone. Her name was Commandant Hessa Vale, and she spoke clearly and without emotion. She requested sovereign recognition over the dead corridor, a stretch of 200 star systems along the galaxy's western fringe, where every star had gone dark thousands of years ago. No species had ever colonized it. No species had ever wanted to. The stars were dead, the worlds were frozen, and the whole region carried the kind of reputation that made even seasoned explorers change the subject. The Gravenmoor wanted to call it home. The hall did not deliberate. The hall laughed. The Varethki delegate, a massive reptilian warlord named Drethis Khan, called them grave dwellers playing at Empire. The Shoani representative compared it to ants, claiming ownership of a cemetery. Even the neutral species exchanged amused glances. The Gravenmoor, a minor human remnant, perhaps 8 or 12 billion people scratching out survival on dead rocks, wanted the Concord to recognize them as a sovereign power. The petition was denied in less than 10 minutes. Commandant Vale said nothing. She did not argue. She did not protest. She simply bowed, turned, and walked out of the hall with her 2 companions following in perfect step. I watched her leave. I watched her eyes. They held no anger, no humiliation, only patience. The deep, geological patience of someone who has been waiting a very long time and can wait a little longer. That should have been our first warning. Let me tell you who the Gravenmoor are, because the Concord never bothered to learn, and that ignorance nearly cost us everything. Centuries ago, humanity fractured. Their homeworld collapsed under its own political weight, and the survivors scattered into the stars in a dozen different directions. Most human factions eventually joined the Concord, the Solari Republic, the Meridian League, the Eos Collective. They became familiar faces at the diplomatic table. They were respected, if not feared. But one group, a single colony fleet called the Morning Expedition, sailed directly into the dead corridor 400 years ago. Their mission was simple and, most believed, suicidal. They wanted to find out why the stars had died. No one heard from them again. For 300 years, they were listed as lost. Their names were added to memorials. Their story became a cautionary tale about human stubbornness. Then, 100 years ago, they came back. Not all of them. Not loudly. A handful of ships appeared at the edge of Concord space. Blocky, dark-hulled vessels made of some iron-colored alloy that our sensors could not fully analyze. They called themselves the Gravenmoor. They traded rarely. They spoke less. They opened a single consulate on Ishan Station, a small, windowless office staffed by 1 clerk. The Concord cataloged them the way you might catalog a strange insect found in a storage room. Noted, filed, forgotten. Nobody asked what they had found in the dead corridor. Nobody asked how they had survived. Nobody asked why their ships, though crude in appearance, moved through space with an efficiency that made our best navigators quietly uncomfortable. Nobody asked because nobody cared. 42 species, millions of warships, trillions of citizens. What was one small human faction living on dead worlds? That was our second warning, and we missed it too. 18 months after the petition was denied, the Varethki Dominion made an announcement that changed everything. Warlord Drethis Khan declared that the dead corridor was unclaimed sovereign vacuum and that the Varethki would annex it immediately. Since the Concord had denied the Gravenmoor's petition, the region legally belonged to no one. The Varethki assembled the largest single fleet deployment in Concord history. 11,000 warships, 4,000 dreadnoughts, 3,500 cruisers, 3,500 escorts and support vessels. Over 9 million military personnel. Drethis Khan broadcast a galaxy-wide address calling it a demonstration of civilized order upon lawless dust. He was proud. His scales gleamed under studio lighting. His officers cheered behind him. I watched that broadcast from my quarters and felt something I could not name. Then I did what diplomacy required. I traveled to the Gravenmoor consulate to deliver a formal warning, a courtesy notification that a Concord member state was mobilizing forces toward their claimed territory. The consulate was exactly as it had always been. Small, windowless. One clerk, a young man with hollow cheeks and steady hands. He read my warning carefully, folded the document, and placed it inside his coat. "Thank you, Ambassador," he said. "The Commandant appreciates your courtesy. No protest, no request for intervention, no fear." I walked away from that office and stopped in the corridor because my hands were shaking. I am 600 years old. My hands do not shake. But standing there, under the cold lights of Ishin Station, I felt something I had not experienced since childhood, on the storm plains of my homeworld. The feeling of standing in open air while the sky turned green. The feeling that weather was coming, weather that did not care whether I was ready. The Varethki fleet crossed into the dead corridor on a Tuesday. For the first 3 days, their reports were triumphant. Dead stars, barren worlds, no energy signatures, no resistance. Drethis Khan broadcast nightly updates, each more boastful than the last. The Gravenmoor's so-called territory was a wasteland, he said, a tomb, a joke. On the 4th day, their sensors picked up gravitational microfluctuations, tiny distortions that did not match any visible mass. Fleet scientists dismissed them as echoes from dead stars. On the 5th day, communications developed latency. Messages took longer to reach Concord relays. The Varethki blamed old infrastructure. On the 6th day, a scout squadron of 40 ships was sent ahead to the central system of the dead corridor, designated Grave Zero. They found a single planet orbiting a dark star. The planet was small, rocky, and emitting nothing at all. Then the scout squadron went silent. Not destroyed, not damaged. Silent. Their transponder signals simply vanished from the fleet's tracking network. 40 warships, gone as if they had never existed. No debris, no distress signal, no energy discharge, nothing. Warlord Khan did what proud commanders always do. He ordered the full fleet forward in combat formation. I was watching from the Concord observation platform, with delegates from 12 species. We had real-time telemetry from the fleet. 11,000 bright dots on a dark screen, moving in perfect formation toward a dead planet. I remember thinking it looked like a river of light pouring into a drain. The fleet reached Grave Zero. 11,000 warships assumed orbital positions around a world that should have been empty. Drethis Khan transmitted one final broadcast on all military frequencies. Gravenmoor, if you exist, surrender now, or be classified as a rogue element. The response came not on military channels, but on every channel simultaneously. Civilian, diplomatic, emergency, commercial. Across the entire galactic communication network. Every species heard it at the same moment. The voice belonged to Commandant Hesse Vale, and it was calm. You were warned. You were offered courtesy. You chose pride. What follows is not conflict. It is education. Then nothing happened. For 90 seconds, absolutely nothing happened. The telemetry screens showed 11,000 warships holding position. 9 million crew members at their stations. The galaxy held its breath. Then the screens went dark. Not static, not signal degradation. Every transponder signature, all 11,000, vanished at the same instant. Not one by one, not in groups. All of them, simultaneously, as if someone had reached into the fabric of space and simply removed them. The observation platform erupted. Delegates screamed. Military advisors shouted for recalibration. Someone insisted it was a sensor failure. Deep space telescopes were aimed at Grave Zero within minutes. They showed nothing. No wreckage, no energy bloom, no radiation. The fleet was simply gone. I sat in my chair and said nothing. I looked at the empty screen. I noted the timestamp. And I understood, with the cold clarity that comes only when certainty collapses, that we had never known what we were dealing with. 9 million souls, 11,000 warships, gone in silence. The Varethki Dominion mobilized its remaining 79,000 warships within hours. 6 other species pledged support. The rhetoric was absolute. Total retaliation, complete destruction. They would scour the dead corridor clean. Then, exactly 48 hours after the disappearance, a data package arrived simultaneously at every Concord capital world. Origin, the dead corridor. Sender, Gravenmoor Central Command. The package contained complete personnel records of all 9 million Varethki crew members. Every single one was alive. Medical scans confirmed they were healthy, unharmed, and sedated. Coordinates showed they had been distributed across 200 Gravenmoor-controlled worlds. The 11,000 warships had not been destroyed. They had been disassembled, taken apart piece by piece, catalogued, and stored. Attached was a single note from Commandant Vale. "Your people are guests. They will be returned when the Concord is ready to listen. The ships will not be returned. Consider them a tuition fee." But the data package contained something else. A navigational chart of the dead corridor. When our best cartographers analyzed it, the floor fell out from under everything we believed. The dead corridor did not contain 200 star systems. It contained over 14,000, hidden behind a network of gravitational lensing arrays that bent light and sensor waves around them, rendering them invisible to outside observation. The dead stars were not dead. They were enclosed in energy-harvesting megastructures that captured their entire output. The Gravenmoor population was not 8 billion. It was over 900 billion. The crude iron ships we had seen were diplomatic couriers. The actual Gravenmoor civilization existed on a scale we had never imagined. They had captured, sedated, and redistributed 9 million individuals across 200 worlds, and disassembled 11,000 warships into raw components, all within hours. The logistics alone suggested capabilities that our finest military minds could not begin to model. 3 weeks later, the Gravenmoor delegation returned to the Grand Deliberation Hall. The same 3 figures in black coats. Commandant Vale at the center. The hall was silent. No laughter. No whispers. 42 species sat in their seats and waited. Vale spoke without raising her voice. "We did not go to the dead corridor to hide. We went to understand why stars die. In 400 years, we found the answer. And in finding it, we learned to do things your civilizations have not yet imagined. We do not seek your approval. We returned a century ago because we believed knowledge should be shared. You laughed at us. We accepted it. When your largest fleet came to claim our home, we did not destroy them. We chose not to, because destruction teaches nothing. We are not your enemies, but we are not your footnote. We are the Gravenmoor. We walked into the dark, and we came back carrying fire. The next time a fleet crosses our threshold uninvited, we will not be so generous." She bowed. She left. The hall sat in silence for 11 minutes. I counted every second. The Varethki crew members were returned within the month. All 9 million, unharmed, well-fed, carrying no memory of their captivity, beyond waking in clean medical rooms staffed by quiet humans. Several officers reported seeing structures orbiting shielded stars that were larger than planets, and children playing in gardens on worlds that should have been lifeless rock. The Concord granted the Gravenmoor full sovereign recognition the following week. No conditions. No debate. Months later, I requested a private meeting with Commandant Vale. She agreed. We sat in a small room with 2 cups of tea, and we talked for 2 hours about philosophy, duty, and the nature of patience. At the end, I asked her the question that had kept me awake for weeks. "What did you find out there, Commandant? What kills stars?" She looked at me, and for the first time she smiled. It was a small smile, quiet and warm, and it made her look very human. "Time, Ambassador," she said. "Time kills everything. We simply learned how to argue with it. I have brokered treaties between gods and monsters. I have spent 6 centuries believing I understood the shape of power. But sitting across from that woman in her black coat, holding a cup of tea that smelled of iron and starlight, I understood for the first time that I had never truly met either gods or monsters. Until now.